So then that leaves, so Jimmy's just watching these guys get knocked down like bowling pins, one right after the other. And that leaves Merc number 3, Christopher Campos. What you're going to see when he peeks his head out and he gets nailed is a lot of things going on at once. And by the way, before I tell you about the hybrid part of it, another thing I missed on a couple of these earlier, you can go back and look at, is the wonderful editing trickery of the great Skip MacDonald and his very able assistant, Joey Reinisch. There are moments pretty much every time one of these guys gets shot. Skip and Joey, when they're cutting these scenes, they'll take out just a frame or two. You know, obviously, you guys listening, you know all this stuff, but obviously what you're watching is a series of pictures, 24 still photos per second that when run together, give you the illusion of motion. If you take out a picture or two out of those 24 per second, you can jump time just a little bit. And what that helps with in moments like this is when these guys get shot, it's really imperceptible. But when Skip and Joey take frames out, the guy's head, for instance, will seem to jerk faster than it actually did in real life. It'll seem more violent. And we love using those kind of tricks. They cost nothing. You just take a frame or two out here or there. You don't want it to be noticeable, but you just take just a little bit out, and so the guy, when he gets shot, obviously the actor is just acting, but he can only jerk his head so quick without giving himself whiplash. So you take a frame or two out, make it even more violent still. And then on top of that, the bullet goes through the headlight of this truck, this black truck. And if you're watching it frame by frame here, you see this bullet hole kind of appear. We did this digitally because these polycarbonate headlights are so tough that if you blow them using explosives with a real guy's head, even though he's a stuntman, his face that close to the explosion, you just can't do that. It's too dangerous. So this is a great kind of a gag to use the modern visual effects for, the computer effects, because otherwise you're putting a stuntman needlessly in danger. But boom, over the course of a frame or so, this animated bullet hole appears. And if you watch it frame by frame, it's so awesome what Ara and the magicians at Rodeo did. When you watch it frame by frame and you look just at the bullet hole, you'll see a little bit of Chris, the actor, falling out of frame. You'll see a little bit of light come through the hole. That's all animated. That's all just layered on, a layer added on to this image. It doesn't exist in real life. It's just animation to make this thing look even more three-dimensional. And of course, Chris, the stuntman, then is firing off blanks, and then there's a real-world effect as he clears frame. You see, it's kind of easy to miss, but there's a spray of blood on the beige and red Bronco behind him, and that's real-world blood shot from an air cannon by Werner and Bob and those guys. And like an idiot, I picked a red Bronco. I mean, I thought the beige side panel would be enough for the blood to hit on, but the blood actually hits up near the hood, and it would have been a better effect on like a yellow truck, but I picked a red one to my chagrin. Shortly after that, you cut quickly to mercenary number 3 firing wildly in his death throes there, and there's a couple of bullet holes that appear in the Esteem's hood in the foreground. Those were actual real-world explosions done by the special effects guys, a couple of holes being shot in the hood. But the computer trickery here, which is amazing, is that we knew there was no way we're going to time this thing perfectly. And we didn't want to do more than one take of this. I think we only might have had the one hood. Maybe we had 2, but we were so rushed for time. These are the kind of shots you want to get in one take. So boom, boom, a couple of bullet holes appear in the Esteem's hood, and you can see the hood rattle a little bit. I think that was the effect of the squibs going off underneath. And the guys, the special effects guys, dressed in a little bit of dust in the hood, so a little dust rises off. But there was no way we're going to time this thing perfectly with the stuntman firing the machine gun in the background. So what we do in a situation like this, we shot it in separate passes. So boom, boom, we get a shot of the squibs going off in the hood of the Esteem and the lower left foreground. and then they're already shot in, but you shoot, there's nobody in the background at that point. You lock down the camera, a couple of squibs go off in the hood, you get that part, you leave the camera locked down, and then you have Chris do his stuff in the background, where he gets shot and he falls down, and then digitally the guys stitch those two pieces together, which wouldn't necessarily be that hard, except that when Chris, as you see, when Chris hits the dirt there, the dust goes flying and it crosses the matte line. So then the rodeo guys have to digitally animate in dust across the matte line. Otherwise it would just reach like the diagonal midpoint of the image, and then it would just disappear, and you'd notice it as a viewer. You'd say, well, what the hell happened to the dust? That's like some kind of weird split screen. So what these guys can literally do now is animate stuff like that dust across the matte line, which is astounding. And then on top of everything else, the cherry on top is that you can see, if you look real closely, you can see that bullet hole in the headlight of the black truck. That little speck that looks like a bullet hole is all done digitally too. Really, really something. So then here in the wider shot, including Bob, Chris hits the dirt and the dust goes flying. This looks like the simplest shot in the world. Like, what visual magic would we need for this? What's the big deal? The big deal here is that we couldn't have Chris firing his blank shooting machine gun with Bob in the foreground, because you just don't know what's going to happen. You don't want to put anyone in front of a gun that's firing blanks that's not fully plugged. We can't put Bob, we wouldn't put anyone in front of this thing. So what we had to do here is that two-pass thing again I just told you about. Here, we locked down the camera, we shot Christopher falling to the ground, shooting off his machine gun, blanks going bub, 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 like crazy. And he hits the ground and the dust goes flying, because I'm always asking for extra dust to be dressed in, because you want lots of dust as a director. And then we kept the camera locked down. I yell cut. Then Christopher clears out. And then Bob gets into the foreground and he acts, he flinches and acts, and I'm off camera yelling, boom, ba, 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 making all kinds of sound effects. I think I was hitting two pieces of wood together, and Bob is reacting to it. But they're two entirely different pieces. They're digitally stitched together, and here again is that amazing magic where the dust has to cross the matte line. So the dust in the background that crosses from the left side of frame into the middle and right side of frame is digitally added in after the fact. It mixes with some of the real dust down in the mid and lower left. I don't know how they do this stuff. It's astounding. So now everybody's dead, or so we think. There's again another example of those vinyl blood puddles. Here comes our mystery sniper. A little bit of brains here dressed in on the side view mirror of the Jeep. That was Cheri Montesanto put those in. I said, I want some like skull looking stuff here, and she found little bits of, I think she might have, that glue gun again, she might have broken off little pieces of that. And here is Tiburon, who we forgot all about. This guy was the smart one. He's hiding out in the back of the Bronco here. And this character, Tiburon, played by Corey Eubanks. Corey here, who no doubt you'll hear about in some other audio commentary, and also the podcast, the Better Call Saul podcast. This is the brilliant stunt driver who does the actual cannon roll at the end of the episode. He's the guy that flipped this Bronco. I lost count. I don't know how. I think he was only like one or two rotations shy of the world record. This guy does this all over the world, something like 4 times a year, and he is the maestro of cannon rolls. This is the oldest effect in the world, but this is a dummy. We put a bunch of sandbags underneath the wheel and underneath the dummy so that the wheel of the truck would hit and then bounce up in the air. So we didn't want to just ragdoll this dummy. We wanted it to actually make the truck bounce a little bit. And also here's that patented, lose a few frames trick, that editing trick where there are a couple of frames missing on each tire hit of the dummy to make the hit look a little more violent. Simplest trick in the book, but works like gangbusters. So Tiburon drives off, and here comes Mike. Spoiler alert, Mike Ehrmantraut, here he is. This shot, by the way, looking straight down, drone shot, a couple of 100 feet up, operated by Marshall Adams, our wonderful director of photography, and Matt Credle, his B-camera operator. Those guys operate this thing together. They get amazing shots. I'm not even like a huge fan of drones, but I tell you, it's amazing what they can do. You don't want to go too nuts with them, I think, as a director. You don't want to overuse them, but what I love about them is it's a way of putting a camera in places that you could never put a camera before now. I mean, that shot, you just couldn't get that shot a few years ago. The technology really is astounding. Here comes Mike with his big-ass .44 short-barreled revolver, and that muzzle flash is added in digitally because in real life, camera has about a 50-50 chance of catching muzzle flashes from guns. A lot of you listening to this probably already know this stuff, but you have roughly a 50-50 chance of catching these very short flashes. So that one was added in after the fact. It was actually, funny little bit of trivia, a muzzle flash that we shot for El Camino. We probably used that same muzzle flash in the shootout at the end of El Camino, and here we are using every bit of the Buffalo. Very ecologically sound of us, reusing muzzle flashes over and over again in different projects.
You hit?
Hit. So jumping ahead here, we got one last effect. This is the antifreeze coming out of Mike's radiator. Mike's truck has obviously been shot up by Tiburon as he was escaping. And this is maybe not as flashy as some of the other special effects, but this is a special effect that takes time and planning and prior meetings and discussions because we had to pick some ecologically safe stuff. I guess it was just like food-colored water or something that looks like antifreeze, but we're not actually going to be spreading the real thing out on this beautiful, pristine tribal land that we're shooting on. And then the last piece of the puzzle here was Marshall Adams, our DP, saying to me, do you want to change the shutter angle on the camera? And I said, well, what does that do? And he says, well, if we dial it in right, the little individual drips will be more in focus. They won't have the motion blur on them that they will normally have. So when you watch this little bit here, the drips, when they're in focus, you see the individual drips more. And that's playing with the shutter angle. So I hope you guys have enjoyed listening to this. It's probably more information than anyone in their right mind needs about how the effects and the makeup artistry and the cinematography and all of this stuff went together. If you remember nothing else about this, keep in mind that this was very much a group effort, and we got the best folks in the world as our crew. I'm very lucky to be able to say this was an amazing melding of folks out in the desert shooting this, and then wonderful post-production work, including, I haven't even talked about the sound effects and the music and the color grading, all of this stuff. It is very much a group effort, this, or in fact, any episode of this show at all. And I want to thank everyone who worked on this episode, because they made me look good.